Hello, my friends. I'd like to address the concept of two by two jargon, or two by two phraseology, terminology, things like that. I think a reasonable argument can be made that two by twos have created basically an Orwellian system of language. I don't know if you're aware. What I mean by that is that George Orwell wrote a book called 1984, and in that book, it the characters had a number of words that were misrepresentations of reality, and the language had been changed for these characters so that you know war meant peace and peace meant war and up meant down and stuff like that. So it's a way of trapping people by changing their language. Okay, so that's when we use the word Orwellian, we're talking about a way of changing a language to enslave a people so that people can't think outside of their own this modified language. And I think that's what's gone on in the two by twos. So I'm going to go through some of the jargon and phraseology of the two by twos, and at the end we can decide whether or not this conjecture I've made is correct. So the first thing to start out with is, what is the name of the two by twos? What is their name? Well, they don't have a name, as you know, and I can refer to them as the two by twos because that's kind of what everybody else in the world calls them, but that's not what they call themselves. In fact, they consider that to be derogatory. What they refer to themselves is the truth. Okay, sometimes they'll call themselves the way, but mostly it's the truth. And well, think about that. The truth. Are they? What does that mean? Are they a contrast to what? The false? It's to call yourself in your church the truth is pretty presumptuary, isn't it? I don't. There's no other denomination that does that sort of thing. Just to refer to the truth. So even the word truth, or when we're talking about the truth with a small t, for these two by twos, they hear, the word truth to them means their group, right? They've conflated the dictionary word truth with their jargon word the truth as the same thing, right? And so it traps them. How could you, if you're told as a kid that you're in the truth, how would you think at one point you're saying, no, I think I'm in the false? You see what I mean? Like that's a very, very Orwellian thing to do, to call yourselves the truth. The second thing is the term what they have for their two by two ministers, which is the workers. So okay, well they're the workers. So what do you mean? Everybody who's working is what? It doesn't make any sense. So when you hear the word workers, like there's some people on the street working, that gets conflated with this idea of the workers. So what they are, I mean, what I mean by this is like, what exactly are the workers doing in the two by twos? Well, why aren't they called the preachers or the ministers? Why aren't they called the preachers? Because if it said preachers, then you'd know this is what their job is to preach the gospel, or I guess, as opposed to the workers. The workers just means anything. They're working. Okay, what are they working at? Well, there's no restrictions on what they're working at. So whatever they're doing is working in a sense that that's what they're supposed to be doing. So whether they're sitting in their rooms fiddling with their phones on YouTube, that's working, or whatever. You understand what I mean? Or they're chit-chatting for days on end about gossip, that's working, right? So they're just the workers. It's a totally useless word. And again, if you're a two by two and you're trying to talk to another Christian and you talk about the workers, no one knows what you're talking about. Same thing with the word overseers. And this isn't as bad, of course, because there is some justification to use the word overseers. But what they really mean when they use the overseers is bishops, of course, the bishops. I mean, the two by two system is set up very loosely as an episcopal system, meaning like it has bishops. And these bishops, they don't call them bishops, they call them overseers, okay? Which is, again, kind of weird because every other episcopal denomination calls their bishops, they call them bishops. But anyways, this word overseers kind of gained, just like the word workers has, by not using the proper word bishops, you create basically there's no restrictions on what these people are overseeing, right? It's not restricted. The next word is that you hear a lot, of course, is in meetings, right? Okay. Versus what would we normally say? Well, we're going to the church service or going to mass. No, these people are going to meetings. Again, if you're a 2x2 and you're trying to talk to another Christian and you're talking about meetings, what are you talking about? Like what, a meeting for work? The language is all confused. Doesn't make any sense. And of course, 2x2s have, they have their Sunday meeting, they have their Wednesday night meeting, and they'll have the gospel meetings. Of course, these are slightly different from each other. They have special meetings, all slightly different. Convention meetings, I guess. But it's not really identified as a church service, is it? It's just meetings. So what are they doing in there? Maybe that's the point. There is no actual Christian thing going on in there. It's actually just like a cult meeting, just like the way the JWs call theirs meetings or fellowships. Okay, so the next big term that's jargon that's really confusing for, the 2x2 use is emblems. So this, of course, is in normal church words, we would use communion, Eucharist, Lord's Supper. That's basically the terms that you'd hear in a normal denomination. But the 2x2s never use those terms I refer to. Never, ever, ever. They only use the word emblems. And this, of course, is supposed to be the body and blood of Christ, or the bread and the wine. Now, when they use the word emblems, you can obviously think that it's emblematic, meaning that these are just symbols. They are not actually body and blood of Christ, as some other denominations, such as Anglicans, Lutherans, and Catholics and Orthodox. No, these are just symbols. Okay, fine. I mean, there are some Protestant groups that believe in this symbiology interpretation. But here's the thing: you think that 2x2s then would not have that much respect for these emblems, but they do. Oh no, only there's a certain way of preparing these emblems. There can only be certain kinds of bread. There can only be certain kinds of wine, which you don't really, most places are not using wine, they're using grape juice. But and then particularly what to do after their meetings with the disposal of these things, the leftovers. If they're just emblems, then throw them in the trash, right? But no, they usually have some sort of little thing to do to get rid of it. Usually they take it and pour it out in the ground, or they burn it on a stove or something like that. But it's an odd thing. So again, emblems. If you're a 2x2 trying to talk to a Christian about, the Lord's Supper, you're using words that no one even knows. And again, for the 2x2, they hear the word Lord's Supper, they don't know what that means. And you can, related to this is the holiday Easter, right? 2x2s, they do not know what the holiday Easter is about. They have no idea. So that's another word that is, they don't actually celebrate Easter in any way. There's nothing going on. Okay, there's no special service, nothing. So that's another thing that breaks them from Christians. Very hard to communicate with Christians. So another term is called professing, meaning this is when you join a 2x2. Okay, this is the first step. You profess. Okay, well, what are you professing, right? Normally, in normal churches, the first step is baptism and then confirmation. Confirmation is confirming your baptismal vows, right? Because maybe you were baptized at an age when you weren't fully sentient, let's say. In 2x2s, you profess, and again, you're professing at age 12 or something like that. So you're already at an age that in normal churches, they would be doing the confirmation. So it is let's say, a independent choice by the person, but what are they professing? Well, they're just professing the truth, right? The truth, which is to be a member of this cult. There's, again, if you're a 2x2 trying to talk to Christians, using words like professing, no one knows what you're talking about. Again, baptism is related. Two by twos do use the word baptism. And again, you'll get baptized some point after you profess, maybe like 5 years later, something like that, 16 years old. And it's not actually like a real baptism because the ministers don't say the appropriate words in the baptismal rite. So it's not really a baptism. They do use that word at least. Another word they talk about a lot is Calvary. Now, of course, Calvary is the location where Jesus was crucified, um, but they refer to this all the time. You would think, okay, in Christian churches, when we talk about Calvary, we think, okay, yeah, it was crucified, he died, buried, and then he rose again on the third day. It was a resurrection. So two by twos, they don't know what the resurrection is. They don't discuss that ever. So they're always focusing only on the Calvary part, which is the dying part. Again, that's really odd. If you're a Christian and you're talking to a two by two and they mention Calvary, you're thinking like, okay, yeah, Calvary is the lead up to the resurrection because the resurrection is the most important thing, obviously. That's, by the way, that's what Easter is all about, right? Good Friday is when Jesus dies, and Easter is when he resurrects. So, no, at two by twos, they're all focused on the dying, which is, again, this is very confusing. Um, so another thing that's kind of related to the way they structure the meetings and whatnot are these elders. So an elder is in normal church talk is a deacon. Now a deacon, has very in a normal church has very specified roles and how you can get to be a deacon and requirements and everything. But in the two by twos, an elder is just someone that the ministers have decided that the two by two meetings will be hosted in this person's home. That's all it is. This elder has no real power other than that, no real responsibility. I mean, they may think they should be, uh, consulted for advice on things like this, but really they're nothing. They're not an elder in any regard. It's odd. So, all right, let's discuss what two by twos, some of the terms they have for people who are not in their group, right? So remember, when they talk about people in their group, they'll say, "Oh, such and such is professing." That meaning like that person's member of the two by twos. Like, oh, he or she is professing. Yes, yes. Oh, yes. Is their mom professing? Yes, yes, yes. That kind of stuff. So, but people who are outside of two by twos, they have other words for these people. Okay, and this is how you handle in group, out group, right? If you're a cult. So the first word you'll hear them use is the word worldly or of the world. So someone who's not in a two by twos is of the world. And anything that's not permitted by the two by two ministers, so like such as women wearing pants or drinking alcohol or going to a movie, that's all considered worldly. Okay, that's worldly. So worldly is an off limit space, basically. So when you hear someone say, "Oh, that's worldly," like that's off limits. Don't think about go there. All right. So if you have someone who's in the two by twos, but you know, they have for certain people in twos, they have a word they use which is called that person has a bad spirit. And what that means is this person's starting to ask questions about the two by twos. Maybe saying, I heard there's a book that says the two by twos got started in the early 20th century. Is that true? Immediately, this person who's asking that question will be labeled as a bad spirit. Okay. And all the other two by twos will talk about this person who's got the bad spirit. And of course, what does this mean? They're thinking like it's been infected with a demon, and just have to get this demon has to be, go away. And then they will, if the two by two ministers talk to this person enough, this demon will leave them, and they'll return back to, you know, 100% believer and no more questions. So there are people who leave the two by twos, and those people are called fallen away. Fallen away. Okay. No, it's just again, this is a person who obviously their bad spirit wasn't exercised by the ministers. They'll fall away, or they'll say they lost out, or they lost their salvation, right? Okay, because obviously, if you're not in the two by twos, you're destined to hell. That's 100% true. Everyone knows that, of course. So fallen away, lost salvation, lost out. If you leave the two by twos and you start talking about the two by twos and spreading, information about them, about what they do, you're someone who is bitter. You are have a bitter spirit, or you have a hard heart. Okay. So sometimes they actually will refer to people in the 2x2s uh, um, who has a hardening of heart, a hardening of heart. And this means someone who's, let's say, resisting 2x2 minister commands. So let's say, for example, that you were your wife and you're beaten by your husband and you're want to get some sort of resolution about this, and you go to the 2x2 ministers and they tell you, nope, nothing, you just got to forgive them and move on and continue on. And you think, well, I can't, like, I mean, this is a real problem, this person hasn't changed their behavior. No. So that the 2x2 ministers would say you have a hardening of heart. Okay, you have a hardening of heart. Basically, if you're not compliant with every command, you have a hardening of heart. So it's a little bit related to the bad spirit, but a slightly different phenomenon. Now, again, for people who leave, there are people who, upon leaving, they still want to keep the form of the 2x2 fellowship, like the meetings in the home thing. They really like this stuff. They're really attached to it. So basically, they're afraid to go into a normal church, to be quite honest, because they've been so indoctrinated by 2x2s that those are all false churches. That's another word they use. So these people, they'll try to do like these little Bible studies in their home with some other friends, maybe some other people who have 2x2s. Well, immediately those people are described as starting their own religion. Starting their own religion. I mean, having Bible studies is starting your own religion. That's because, well, obviously you're going to basically be competing with the 2x2s. You see, and you're competing very closely because you're still holding some of the form and structure of the 2x2s. So that's very competitive, right, for them. So, now, 2x2s always, when you hear them talking, they'll talk about religions, or ones who leave 2x2s and will talk about they this religion. Okay, they're angry at 2x2s and also call it, the 2x2ism is a religion. Look, it's not a religion. That's obviously true. All right, Christianity is a religion, Islam is a religion, Buddhism is a religion. 2x2ism is not a religion, it's a cult. It has no real theology. Okay, so it's not a religion, it just has some cobbled together cult talk. So, but this is how they talk about it, right? Because they've been told when they're in the 2x2s that anything outside the 2x2s is a religion. I know that sounds strange, but they think of things in terms of that the word religion is a bad word because Jesus didn't start a religion, right? Or to put it another way, many 2x2s when they leave, they will not join normal churches because they don't want to join a religion. They just want to have a fellowship, right? Again, they've been told that every denomination is a false church. So, I mean, it's again their use of the words is all confused. I mean, just the way I'm describing a word of this use religion, they don't even know what the word religion means. Okay, and that follows through with a lot of these words. I've tried to describe today the common words that they use about themselves and about others, but it turns out that most of the words they use that you would think are normal words about Christianity that are you'd have the same definition with regarding 2x2s, they don't have the same definition, right? So, take for example the word grace. Grace in normal Christian word means an unearned gift. So you were bequeathed an unearned gift. Jesus died for your sins, right? You didn't deserve to get this; it was a free gift. Okay, 2x2s, they don't use that terminology. They don't describe that at all, right? So, and there's a number of other um, terms, general Christian terms, that are changed in 2x2ism. And this is what's very, very difficult for a 2x2 when they leave 2x2ism, if they try to join another Christian church, is because they have to unwind all of these confusions they have about all these different words, right? So when a Christian speaks to them, like a pastor speaks to them, they're not understanding the nuances of what's being said because they have all of these confused definitions embedded in them. So, and I hope that helps to explain why I said at the outset that this is an Orwellian system. George Orwell, 1984 system. The two by twos have created their own little language that traps people with inside it. Frankly, I think that's horrible. And that's, but again, this is cult. This is how cults do it. So hope that helps.